This is the Future Talk, Hamburg Call to Action on Internal Displacement. Please welcome to the stage Clara Pfeffer from RTL and NTV.
Yes, thank you. Welcome to our very first session at the Future Talk stage. I'm delighted to be guiding you through this talk on an incredibly important issue, a topic that is definitely pressing at these times, and a topic that we have gained momentum at the past Hamburg Sustainability Conference in 2025. And we want to use that momentum and take it one step further and talk especially about how to scale the solutions that we have talked about. But since we're a bit past time, I really want to keep it short. And without further ado, I want to give the stage to BMZ Director General Volker Ould to set the stage for this session. Welcome.
So, very good morning from my side, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Indeed, we are running a bit late after a very thrilling opening panel, and I think it was exciting to listen to all those high-level talks. I keep my protocol short because Clara Pfeffer will introduce, I think, all the esteemed speakers and panelists one by one. So all protocol observed. Welcome to all of you to the first panel of the thematic pillar 2 of this year's conference, which deals with risk, uncertainty, and conflict. And I thank you all for joining us for this session on the Hamburg Call to Action on Internal Displacement, turning commitment into investment. And that call really came out of last year's session on internal displacement, its impact, and the search for sustainable solutions, jointly hosted at that time by UNDP and BMZ. I'm very pleased that this discussion brings together voices from across the international community, representatives of affected countries, regional organizations, development banks and development finance institutions, and international organizations. And this diversity is really important. Why? Because the challenge we are facing cannot be addressed by any single actor alone. Moving from commitment to implementation really requires collective action, shared responsibility, and sustained partnerships. And as Alexander de Croo said this morning, moving from talk to action, I think that's what it is all about. For BMZ, advancing durable solutions for internally displaced persons is a strategic priority, because when people remain displaced for years, the consequences extend far beyond the individuals affected. Protracted displacement fuels poverty and inequality, exacerbates social tensions, and ultimately undermines security and development. This is precisely the message at the heart of the Hamburg Call to Action on internal displacement. Internal displacement must not be addressed alone as a humanitarian challenge, but also through the lenses of conflict prevention, peace building, climate resilience, sustainable development. The call for action further recognized that affected governments need strong partnerships and predictable support to integrate displacement prevention, response, and durable solutions into national policies, programs, and financing frameworks. Moving from commitment to action has to address the question on how financing can focus on the most enabling and transformational sectors and catalytic activities which encourage policy reforms and transformation towards sustainable solutions. And encouraging and enabling policy environments can also set the scene for the private sector to play its role as a multiplier by creating jobs, mobilizing investment, and fostering economic participation. This is particularly urgent because many countries affected by internal displacement are already facing significant fiscal constraints and limited access to financing. And at the same time, the scale and complexity of the challenge demand for approaches that go beyond traditional assistance. We need a whole of financing approach that mobilizes public and private domestic and international resources, and that connects national solutions with broader development and financing frameworks. And there are good examples for that to happen. I just want to give one example, and that is the Internal Displacement Solutions Fund, established under the Secretary's General Action Agenda. And it's one important example where the UN works as one, and an example which deliberately operates in a catalytic way. And BMZ from the start has been supporting this fund because we are convinced that this is the right approach to address and bridge the gap between commitment and delivery. Today's session is not only about reaffirming the importance of the Hamburg Call to Action or to take stock of progress achieved over the past year. It's also an opportunity to move the conversation one step further towards scaling delivery, exploring and strengthening partnerships, and identifying concrete priorities for mobilizing and aligning financing behind government-led solutions at scale. And I hope this discussion will bring greater clarity on how we as partners can better join forces to support affected governments in addressing internal displacement and advancing durable solutions. And I really look forward to the panel discussion and the keynote speech as to the insight and contributions you will all provide. So thank you very much for coming and joining us here for this session, and looking forward to a very focused and constructive discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Volker, for setting the tone for this session. And since all our speakers have arrived now, I want to say another warm welcome to all of you, His Excellencies, ministers, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. We have an important session ahead of us. And since Volker already mentioned this, we also want to hear from affected people and regions. And we have a message from Amat Ala Abdullah. She is on the advisory group member of the IDP. And unfortunately, she couldn't make it here today from Yemen, but we do have a video message from her.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to bring the voices of internally displaced people to this important international platform. My name is Amatilla Abdullah from Yemen, and I am a member of the Global IDP Advisory Group supported jointly by UNHCR and UNDP, which works to amplify the voices of internally displaced people and contribute to discussions that affect their lives and futures. I would also like to express my sincere appreciation to UNHCR, UNDP, and their partners for supporting the meaningful participation of displaced people and for recognizing the importance of allowing us to speak in our own voices. As an internally displaced person and through my work with displaced communities in Yemen, I have learned that displacement is not only about losing a home. It is also about losing stability, opportunities, and the ability to plan for the future. Yet displaced people are not defined by loss. Our priorities are clear: meaningful participation, sustainable support, and opportunities to rebuild our lives with dignity and self-reliance. My message today is simple: invest in long-term solutions, housing, livelihoods, education, and services that help displaced communities recover and contribute. Displaced people don't want dependency. We want the opportunity to rebuild and shape a better future. Thank you.
A very important voice to keep in mind for our discussion today, but probably in general throughout these 2 days that we all have ahead. And before we start into the actual panel discussions, I have the incredible honor to welcome the UNDP Administrator, Alexander de Croo, onto the stage, who is giving us the honor to be here today. Thank you very much.
Distinguished guests, let me again use this opportunity to thank the government of Germany for organizing this Hamburg Sustainability Conference. As I said in my introduction in the main hall, fragmentation is higher than ever. And the answer to fragmentation is using locations like this to build sustainable partnerships and to build alliances that are oriented towards finding solutions. Here we speak specifically about internally displaced people, or in the jargon we call it IDPs. Last year, this was more than 82 million people. 82 million people, that's more or less the population of Germany. And internally displaced people is actually a larger group than refugees. Now, if you would talk to a broad public, people would understand what refugees are. If you talk about internally displaced people, they would often not understand what it is, or they would say, well, it's not exactly an issue. Right? These are people that are displaced within their own country. Yes, maybe in the short run there might be some humanitarian needs, but these are things that can be solved. The reality is actually a different one. Very often we see that the issue is a humanitarian issue, yes, but very often it turns into a real development issue. These are people that are in their own country, but are looking for schools for their kids. They're looking for healthcare services. They are looking for jobs. They are very often looking to rebuild a future. Because we all start by saying, oh, it's temporary internal displacement. There is nothing as permanent as temporary, because very often temporary stays temporary, but it becomes a fixed thing. Now, handling this demands an incredible amount of resilience. It is really hard for a country to deal with big shifts in population. And it is almost impossible to say that, well, you could try to prepare for that. I mean, some of the displacements that we see is millions of people being displaced. No country can be prepared for that. You cannot expect anyone to be prepared for that. So what it demands is a real development approach, and it demands partnerships to make it work. It really demands what we call development. Now, this year, UNDP is the convener of UN's Champions of Solutions for Internal Displacement. And we are uniquely positioned to bridge that gap between what we would call global advocacy and country-level actions. Our priorities in trying to find solutions for internal displacement is mostly focusing on advancing financing. I think we talked about what is necessary, but these solutions, these services, these healthcare and other solutions that we try to bring, I mean, this demands a high level of financing. And we are working together with other agencies and with the resident coordinators in finding solutions for that. Now, what we see is that on the planning phase, on integrating it in national development plans, we've actually gone quite far. Today, if you take the 21 countries that are most affected by displacement, in 90% of those 21, so it's almost all of them, today you have government-led frameworks that are trying to find durable solutions to internal displacement. So we see that the politics really are changing. What we need to do is make sure that the financing is also following, and that we have specific tools of financing specifically for that. The national strategies are there, the coordination mechanisms are there, the legal frameworks are very often there, the data systems are very often there. What we need now is pooled catalytic financing that we can use to scale those solutions. The best argument we can use is to show that it works. And we have great examples on where development solutions for displacement really have worked. And let me give two examples. One is Iraq. As I said in my previous speech, the danger does not stop when the war ends. The danger stops when people return. Now, people return when you have schools, when you have healthcare, when you have basic services. In Iraq, we have been investing in this, UNDP and other partners, incredibly successful. More than 5 million people have returned to their original places where they used to be living. This is a success story that no one talks about, or not enough. In Nigeria, we have done the same. Catalytic investment of $2.5 million led to unlock 300 million of a World Bank program that has helped 7.4 million people to return to their livelihoods. So it works. It works. It is a major factor of stabilizing countries. Imagine any country where you come from, if at some point your population just doubles. If at some point the schools where your kids go, they're not going a full day to school anymore, they're only going half a day to school anymore because internally displaced people also need to send their kids to school. Understand the kind of tension that it builds in a country, that it builds in a society. And this is what the Hamburg Call for Action that was just mentioned and it was launched last year tries to solve. I think that in a year's time, we've made great progress. I think now all the systems are there, all the elements are there. We now know the type of financing that is available. And maybe last message that I want to give is this is also economic opportunity. These are people that are looking for a job. These are people that are consumers. These are people that are looking for a home. This is not a pure cost. This is an investment in rebuilding societies and rebuilding thriving societies that can be blooming societies for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexander Croo, for these very important and also especially motivating words that we will use now to dive deep into this discussion and really find out what we need in order to scale these solutions and strategies that we have already found within only a year's time. So let's see what can be done until next year. And I want to welcome onto stage for this discussion His Excellency, Deputy Minister of Finance, Budget, Economy and Planning, Mr. Saleh Bourma. Please come join me on stage. Thank you. Hello. And next up, we're also very honored to have him here, the Executive Secretary of the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, Dr. Workneh Gebeyehu. Please welcome him on stage. And another huge honor to have him here, the President of the African Development Bank, Dr. Sidi Ould. Welcome. And I'm very happy that she will also join us on stage, the Head of Humanitarian Insurance Solutions of the Africa Risk Capacity, Gloria Wamitso. Another applause. So thank you all for being here. And we want to start, thank you very much. We want to start with you, Mr. Deputy Minister. First up, this session is now, the first answer is going to be in Arabic. I will sum it up after the words a little bit so everybody can take away the key messages. And I want to ask you, how is Chad turning displacement into concrete investment projects that both public and private investors can support? And where are the main gaps?
السيدة مديرة الجلسة، السيدات والسادة الضيوف الكرام، أعضاء المنصة، السيد رئيس البنك الإفريقي، السيدات والسادة، كل على حسب مقامه ومنزلته وصفته، مع كامل الاحترام للأصول والأعراف البروتوكولية. أتوجه بخالص الشكر والامتنان إلى منظمي مؤتمر هامبورغ للاستدامة على هذه المبادرة المهمة المخصصة للبحث عن حلول مستدامة لقضية النزوح الداخلي. وكما أتقدم بجزيل الشكر والتقدير إلى شركائنا الفنيين والماليين ولا سيما برنامج الأمم المتحدة بنيت والوكالة الألمانية للتنمية جيزت على دعمهم المتواصل ومرافقتهم لجهود جمهورية تشاد في مجالات التنمية وبناء السموت وتعزيز الاستقرار والبحث عن حلول مستدامة للنزوح القسري. تقف جمهورية تشاد اليوم أمامكم وهي تستشعر بالمسؤولية الوطنية والإنسانية. فعلى مدى عقود طويلة استضافت بلادنا وحمت ورافقت السكان النازحين اللاجئين الذين اضطروا إلى الفرار من أزمات لم يكونوا مسؤولين عنها. واليوم تكتسب هذه المسؤولية بعداً جديداً، فنحن نواجه ضغطاً غير مسبوق يتمثل في وجود أكثر من 3 مليون شخص في وضعية النزوح أو لجوء، وهي أرقام تبقى تقديرية نظراً إلى تدخل السكان والحركات البشرية المستمرة وعدم تسجيل جميع الوافدين رسمياً في القوائم. ومن بين ما يقارب 1,500,000 لاجئ يقيمون في المدن الكبرى، وقد اندمج كثير منهم مع السكان المحليين ونشأت بينهم روابط اجتماعية وأسرية جعلتهم جزء من أصل البلد الذي يعيشون فيه. وبدأ النسيج الوطني مع هؤلاء اللاجئين في بلادنا تشاد. وقد أدت التدفقات الأخيرة من السودان، من إفريقيا الوسطى، من نيجيريا والنيجر والكاميرون، ومع الحركات الأخيرة التي حصلت لبوكو حرام في لاكشاد، العدد تزايد وبقى أكثر فأكثر. كما تواجه تشاد في الوقت نفسه تحديات أمنية في العديد من المناطق. تتقاسم المجتمعات المضيفة على الرغم من حشاشة مواردها وخدماتها ومقومات صمودها مع الوافدين، وهي تشكل اليوم حجر الزاوية في استجابتنا لهذه الأزمة. ومع ذلك لا تفوتني الفرصة هنا إلا وأن أشكر رئيس البنك الإفريقي الذي يقف دائما وأبدا معنا في المحن. فلنكن واقعين، فإن الاحتياجات الحالية تمس أكثر من 4,400,000 شخص، كما أن تلبية هذه الاحتياجات تتطلب ما يقارب $2,000,000,000 أمريكا خلال عام 2026. فالتمويلات الحالية ما زالت مجزأة على انتظار انخراط واسع للنطاق من القطاع الخاص، ما لم تتوفر بيئة مواتية للاستثمار وآليات فعالة للحد من المخاطر. وإذا أردنا أن نكون صادقين وذوي مصداقية هنا في هامبورغ، فعلينا أن نعترف بحقيقة بسيطة، وهي أننا لا يمكننا الاستمرار في مواجهة الصدمات الهيكلية الكبرى بالأدوات نفسها التي صممت لمواجهة أزمات الماضي. فلا يمكننا الحديث عن الصمود من دون استثمارات كبرى في المناطق المتأثرة بالنزوح، كما لا يمكننا الحديث عن التكيف مع التغيرات المناخية من دون إدماج الأقاليم الواقعة عند الأزمات المناخية وحالات النزوح القسري. ولقد أدرجت تشاد هذه القضية ضمن تخطيطها الوطني والترابي، وحددنا أولوياتنا الاستراتيجية، ونعمل تدريجيا على تطوير محفظة من الاستثمارات. ومن هذا المنطلق فإننا ندعو إلى تعزيز التمويلات الميسرة والمتعددة، وستواصل جمهورية تشاد بكل مسؤولية، ولكن ينبغي أن نكون واضحين أيضا. إن ما نقوم به اليوم لن يكن مستداما ما لم يحدث تحولا عميقا في قواعد العمل القائمة. إن القضية لم تعد تقنية فحسب، بل أصبحت قضية سياسية بامتياز. فهل نحن مستعدون لتكييف النظام الدولي مع واقع القرن 21، أم أننا سنواصل إدارة أزمات المستقبل بأدوات الماضي؟ إن تشاد مستعدة لحمل راية الحلول المستدامة والشاملة، وقد آن الأوان لترتقي الاستجابة الدولية إلى مستوى هذا الالتزام. أشكركم على حسن إصغائكم. Je sais que vous ne comprenez pas bien l'arabe, mais quand même, elle va traduire.
Here we are.
Merci à vous aussi.
I was lucky enough to know about your main points beforehand. So let me try and summarize. I think it's exactly what Mr. de Croo also talked about, that Chad finds itself at the center of this crisis with more than 3 million people displaced, and realizing that current workflows, current financing flows are too slow, they're outdated, and that we really need to modernize these processes and to find better solutions. And that Chad also finds itself very responsible and wants to take action in that field. Sorry for that. And I want to take that question further to the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, because I think this is where we can really help to understand how countries can align their rules and reduce cross-border risks so that investors are more willing to invest in displacement-affected areas.
Thank you very much. Thank you. For me, the issue of displacement is very, very close to my region. Now, when we are talking, millions of the citizens of the region are internally displaced. The perfect example is Sudan, which really we don't know exactly how many millions are displaced from their home. But we're very sure that Sudanese are now not living in their home. And also, when we talk about displacement, yes, the derogative word displacement is always there, but this displacement is about humanity, human being. From these displaced people, there is a capital, human capital. The farmers are there, the expertise, the engineers, the doctors, every kind of combination is there. But that human capital needs a capital, which maybe my brother will address later on. Now, the displacement crosses the borders, but the capital, the finance, which would have been the best to tackle this thing, cannot cross the borders. So this is one of the areas. In IGAD region, from very inception, before 40 years, the establishment of the organization which I lead is established for countering desertification and internal displacement. So far, within these 40 years, we did a lot of things, but the intensity of displacement has not changed or even increased significantly. So we are not exactly dealing with the real problem that we are facing. The population grows, the conflict between and among communities, the political conflicts and cross-border conflicts which exacerbate the issue of displacements are there. The magnitude of that conflict is not decreasing now, it is increasing. The other critical issue is the climate issue that have a very, very vivid impact upon our region. You can see in South Sudan, in Somalia, in Sudan, in Ethiopia, most of the countries which are residing in that region are affected by the climate change, which definitely has pave the way for internal displacement. That's why IGAD now come together and we try to have a common position, how really we can work together to tackle this problem. Because the problem is more or less the same from one country to the other country. So one is having a protocol, the protocol of free movements. One citizens of Kenya who is displaced because of X and Y reason, he can go to Ethiopia or he can go to Somalia and he can have a job and any kind of thing. That is one of the protocol which is approved by IGAD. This is an investment. The other point is that we have different declarations, Nairobi, Mombasa Declaration, Kampala Declaration. These are the protocols that all member states agreed upon how to handle the issue of displacement, because displacement is not going to be in one country, because it is going to be not only a regional, it's a continental issue. It's beyond that. We are working with the European Union because the problem is not going to be there, it is going to be everywhere. We are part of the world. So we are very rich in terms of contributing, the displacement. We are rich in terms of resources, but still we have a challenge in terms of, number one, working together, collaborating. Number two is the financial stress that nowadays, especially this morning, everybody is talking about the challenge that we are facing to the multilateral institutions. So these all things has hampered us as a regional organization, as a continental organization, to tackle, to support our member states, how to best, until they come back to their home, these displaced people, to support them wherever they are. That the challenge is, in spite of all the things that we are doing, still that challenge is that we have not graduated from that problem. Thank you.
So one of the keys is definitely the financing. Yes, thank you. And you've already spoken about the capital, so I do want to pass it on to the African Development Bank. We have the president here. So maybe you can explain to us how you include displaced people in your work and how we can move from scattered aid projects that are different in each country to large-scale coordinated investments.
No, thank you very much. So let me start by one point, which is related to prevention. So we always talk about the outcome, but we don't talk about how we can prevent being in this situation. So an IMF study has shown that $1 spent on prevention avoid $103 as a cost of the result of displacement. So it's very important really to work on prevention and to invest in prevention. And this is why the African Development Bank is now focusing more on prevention, because we do believe that that can really avoid a lot of costs for all our countries. Second, on the financing, the African Development Bank has been the first MDB to set up a financial solution for fragility and addressing the issue of internally displaced people. So the bank has already spent $7 billion on the fragility facility. But the way we look at it is that we should not take IDPs as a humanitarian situation. It's a development situation. And unless we involve it and we embed it in the national development plan, we will always come up with partial solution to the problem. So it should be part and parcel of the country's economic planning, and also from the investment side. Third, we need really to think about how we can bring the private sector solution in the game, because it cannot only be funded through grants and concessional loan. If we provide the right de-risking mechanism, we can unlock private sector financing, even in very difficult situation. And the African Development Bank has a very, very good success stories. So one of the recent success story was in South Sudan, where a program has been providing financing to women and youth displaced. And they have been able not only to sustain their life, but also to build a new life in the place where they have been relocated, and they are repaying their loans regularly. So this is something we can do, and it can really work. So last but not least, partnership is key. So no country, no institution alone can handle the issue of IDP. So we need to work with all the partners, the international institutions, the NGOs, civil society, local civil society, international institutions, United Nations institutions. We need to work together, and each one of us will provide what that institution is better equipped to deliver. And when we join our forces, financing will not be the issue.
That sounds very motivating as well. And I think what we hear is interesting, yes. For all private investors, but private investors don't like risk. So I want to talk about solutions, how to reduce these risks. Gloria Wamitso, you work with these kind of solutions. What do we need in order to really use those opportunities for private investors and scale them?
Thank you so much, and good morning, everyone. And from ARC's perspective, the three main risks that discourage investors working in the region where the host displaced people are the climate risk, fiscal risk, and the data gap. Let's start with the first one, which is also the most evident, obvious one, which is the climate risk. Climate shock becomes more frequent, more severe, and also make displacements worse. We have drought, we have cyclone, we have flood that will increase the food insecurity, destroy livelihood, and also put more pressure on government who are already facing difficult situation. As a result, the climate risk has become an investment risk. The great news is that climate risk is also one of the few risks that is measurable, that we can model, and that we can transfer. At ARC Limited, for those who don't know, ARC Limited, African Risk Capacity Limited, is a mutual insurance company owned by the government. We are the specialized agency of the African Union, and we work with the government and humanitarian actors and also MDBs actually to provide pre-arranged financing and capacity building through parametric insurance. So unlike traditional insurance, parametric insurance enables payout to be disbursed within few days. And ultimately, the government will receive immediately liquidity to reach vulnerable people. We have started in 2014, and since then we have paid 100 million payout to the countries and also humanitarian actors. Recently, I will give the example of Somalia. We have paid this year 5.5 million to the government, to the humanitarian actors as well, partners such as Start Network and WFP, to reach over 153,000 people. And ultimately, the second risk I will share, I mentioned is fiscal risk. So the many governments hosting large displaced population already operate under significant fiscal pressure, high debt, small budget. And therefore, when the climate shock happens, there is no money or very a few money left to address that issue. And this is where it's very important actually to put in place contingency financing, to put in place a contingency plan. At ARC, we will work with the government to have in place the contingency plan that will define in advance, before the crisis happens, how this fund will be used, who will be implementing the responses, and who will be the beneficiaries. No negotiation, no delay. For example, we have paid last year to the government of Malawi 3.4 million for the anticipatory action policy. That helped actually the government to deploy the responses to vulnerable people within days. Also, we have a program with the World Bank that we call HIPAIR. For that, they have in place the contingency fund, they have in place the reserves that are already there. And then we pay just for the government of Mozambique more than 30 million for the flood that happened this year and also the cyclone Jude that happened last year. The third risk, and which is also the misunderstanding risk, is the data gap. You cannot price a risk that you cannot measure. So reliable data is a fundamental. Of course, I'm an insurer, but not only for the insurers, but also for the governments, for MDPs, for private sectors. So in my company, so at ARC Limited, what we have put in place is really to work with satellite data set, but also we build in-house tools such as African Risk View that will model drought, tropical cyclone explorer, and flood explorer. So overall, we also work with the government experts and national experts such as the Meteo and IGAD actually to calibrate this model. Ultimately, and I think Adrian was the president of the AfDB said, risk transfer also is not the standalone solution. It is one of the components that should come with a broader strategy to help government to move from reactive approach to proactive approach. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. And I'm really glad that we got to hear all these perspectives on the same issue. And I think what we can definitely take away is that working together is the key, and that we need to use the momentum from past year and continue to carry it on from this year to next year, hopefully. We're a little bit short on time, but I do want to give 2 interventions from the floor the option to add to that. And please be brief, since the next session is already waiting for us. But yes, I want to hear from Katharina Tote from the UNHCR, please. The microphone is still missing. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks a lot for convening this panel. I think just the numbers were already mentioned earlier, 82 million internally displaced people in more than 100 countries. I think we do have a bit of an opening in the sense that there were also 10 million who returned last year. So this is really a situation where I think the call to action for more financing and investment is really key, since humanitarian action, it was mentioned, can't solve these problems. There are 3 priorities. I think the data gap was also mentioned. Data has to drive investment decisions. And I think there's some really promising practices in different countries, in Chad, Somalia, Iraq, Ethiopia, where there is a lot of good work being done there. Another priority, really alignment and reinforcing of national strategies and that already exist to really make those part and parcel of the investment planning, and the third priority to work more strongly with the private sector and see the economic potential in these areas, not just see them through a humanitarian lens. And finally, the decisions that IDPs themselves take, I think, have to factor into the planning. They have to decide, do they want to return or settle locally? And so that's really important for them to be able to make that decision and the planning to work around that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Katharina Tote. I think that is definitely the case. We do need to see those things as investment opportunities, and these stages are important. Thank you very much for your work. Thank you all for being here. Unfortunately, we must come to an end, but I think we will continue the discussion throughout these 2 days. Thank you very much. Sorry.